I made a whopping $10,000 my first year. So that was, massive. Just to kind of go back to your question, it was challenging. My wife definitely supported our family. And there was many times, I think the first 6 people I presented care plans to said 0. And I was like an all or none guy. It was like, you started for a year, like you either prepay for a year or you're not a patient. And that's how we started things. And it was like, all right, we're going all in.
That was Dr. Justin Brown. And yeah, he went from making $10,000 his first year in practice to making $3 million plus without taking insurance. In this episode, we get into exactly how he did it and why he believes that keeping your prices low is actually stagnating your growth in your practice. We also get into this concept called doctor psychology, which he also believes is the ceiling to most chiropractic practices. If you're trying to build a high-earning chiropractic business without being reliant on insurance, this episode's for you. Let's dive in. Dr. Justin Brown, welcome to the show. How are we doing, my man?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for the invitation here, Corey.
Yeah. I got referred to you, and I'm glad that I did, because after doing a little bit of digging, I think we'll have a fun conversation here. But let's kick it off right away. Let's kind of dive into it. I know you've been practicing for 20 years. You built the $3 million practice, but I'm curious though, is like if we were to go back to the original days of getting into practice, what did the first couple years actually look like? Let's bring some honesty to this conversation, I guess.
All right, let's go back to the way back. Yeah. So, I started as an associate right out of Palmer back in 2005. Had an awesome experience, learned a ton, worked a lot of hours, had a lot of growth in those first couple of years out of school. I love the idea of associateship because you get to kind of learn on someone else's dollar. You get to try things, test things. I was in Seattle, Washington. I knew I wasn't going to set my life up in Seattle. So I was like, look, I'll be as radical as I can possibly be. I'll test everything. I'll see what works. I'll fall on my face often. And this is going to be great. And I did that. And I had a ton of success with it. So really, it was just like this amazing way to kind of build my technical skills, leverage someone else's experience. Really, I started making money right away because I just started bringing value to that practice. I got to, be trained. I went to seminars. I was getting training. I was getting practice management. And so essentially I was like, this is awesome. So I'm super grateful for that experience. Set up my practice in South Florida back in January of 2008. And I didn't know the world was crashing. I didn't know the stock market was crashing. So when people were like, yeah, Bernie Madoff took all my money and all my net worth is gone, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're subluxated. Sign right here. So it was just like, I didn't know what was going on in the world. And I was just blissfully naive, which was really a blessing. And I was just really on fire and on purpose to get people under care. And, people thought I was crazy. I took no insurance. I knew nobody in South Florida. Just was like, I've got this principle and I've got this ability to adjust these people. And, we do upper cervical in our practices. So yeah, essentially that's kind of like what kicked us off. I made a whopping $10,000 my first year. And so that was, massive. Just to kind of go back to your question, it was challenging. My wife definitely supported our family. And there was many times, I think the first 6 people I presented care plans to said 0. And I was like an all or none guy. It was like, you started for a year, like you either prepay for a year or you're not a patient. And that's how we started things. And it was like, all right, we're going all in. And I think the 7th person said yes. And I could like breathe again. And, but since that time, yeah, it's been an awesome journey. I think we've now trained our 35th associate. We've got, there's a collective. So it's, just to kind of go back to your question about the 3 million and all that. Yeah. I think actually collective is over 6 million in revenue right now. And so we've got, a good group of chiropractors that contribute towards that, 4 practices, partners. So it's a very much a team effort. And I think, close to about 40 employees. So it's that's where we're at currently.
Let's go back to the $10,000 a year benchmark of when did you finally feel like you were getting the grasp of what the hell you were doing? Because I think sometimes it's worth talking about the realities of the situation, because I feel so often people, they assume it's faster than what it actually is in the reality of the world. So I'm curious as to like, when did things actually start to turn for you and you started to see that maybe that hockey stick start to turn upwards instead of just like a flat line year after year?
Yeah. After that first year, there's not even a really a quarter that I can remember that we really haven't grown. I think we had maybe one flat year during the early COVID era, but outside of that, I mean, we've really grown year over year. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know if there was any magic to it, Corey. I can't tell you there was like one pivotal time when we started to, hockey stick up and to the right. I think it's just been a culmination of a lot of things, a lot of great mentors that I've had, great coaches, a lot of implementation mixed in with some good hard work and people. I mean, we just highly believe in developing and building people. That's the essence of what we do. We're great at that. We inspire people. We love chiropractic. We love our product, but we love our patients more than our product. So we lead with patient needs, and that's really been our secret sauce, I would say. But no, I can't tell you, I mean, exact year. I mean, it was a slow growth over many years. I can't tell you like year two exploded. I think it grew significantly from year one, which isn't saying much. And then, year over year, it just started to get stronger. I think we built to $1 million practice within, I want to say maybe year six was probably $1 million practice, in revenues. And I don't know, $1 million practice doesn't mean much anymore. All of our practices are over $1 million, and that's just kind of almost like now the norm, I would say.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I think that is having to be a reality check for a lot of docs as well. Because I think that a lot of docs assume that the seven figures is when they officially feel like they've made it and they can pack things up and stop working. But the reality of the situation is, I just had a conversation with a doctor not that long ago, but like they're more envisioning the 10 million mark seems like a more healthy number to kind of start striving for, just because of the realities of the world. But and you did mention the 30 plus trained associates, which is great and amazing, and I'm sure we'll definitely dive into that. But before we get to that, tell us more about like why, like when did you realize that traditional chiropractic wasn't the model that you wanted to follow, and like how did you start to figure out how to figure out your own path? And would you recommend somebody else do the same thing? Because I'm sure there's probably a lot of growing pains going through some of that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to unpack that question. So when you say traditional chiropractic, you mean like as far as the model goes, or you mean as far as the technique goes? What do you mean by that?
More model based, like the actual like business structure, and or were you just following the tried and true of what the mentors were teaching you? I'm curious as to like how that kind of evolved and grew.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, I'll kind of go back to the genesis of Serve Bigger, because Serve Bigger is really what we're focused on now. And I think, I was witnessing a lot of chiros either aging out, just their health was declining as they were getting older. It's physical, right? What we do is very physical, as we break our backs fixing others, right? And it's so I'd see this over and over again that play out, and I was like, that's not a pretty picture. That's not how I envisioned the future, of life. I think our work is so powerful, and we should be able to have this beautiful like optionality. If you want to die over a patient, practicing chiropractic, beautiful. Like if that's your vision, like I respect that. I think that's awesome. I don't think that's my vision. I don't necessarily want to like drag myself from table to table taking care of patients, but I realize that chiropractic has not well demonstrated a graceful exit, or an exit where you can actually be rewarded for the fruits of your labor over 20, 30, or 40 years, however long that is for you. And so I was seeing this issue come up over and over again. I saw it with my own mentor, again, over $1 million practice, but just really unable to sell, unable to exit. Other people that their health just got so bad, they had to basically wind it down, turn over the keys. And it's just like, wow, this is really an issue. So years ago, like I think God put this on my heart like 10 years ago. And I was like really scared of this idea of like building this big platform company in chiropractic, but that idea just couldn't get out of my mind. And so ultimately a few years ago now, probably 3, 4 years ago, we started building the infrastructure to build that out. So that is kind of, to answer your question, the operational infrastructure of what we've built has come from the pain of watching this be done so poorly in chiropractic, seeing people not get the value they deserve for their practice, not being able to sell the practice, their health declining, or the doctor's literally just dying and there's no plan in place. Like the family's left to try to figure it out. And it's just usually doesn't work to the advantage of the family. And so for all those reasons and like 10 other reasons, Corey, that's why we built the infrastructure that we have with Serve Bigger. I've always had this passion of serving on a team. I've come from team sports. I was a soccer player, basketball player, love sports, and it's
Hell
just
of a
fun to win
CrossFit athlete.
together. Yeah, it's just fun to win together. So I didn't never practice in a solo office. I never saw myself as a solo. I saw patients get better care when there's multiple people looking at an X-ray, when there's multiple people that are, looking at a case, there's multiple skill sets and knowledge bases. I just see patients get better care in that setting. All the data supports that, from research and from like collegiate settings. Like if you want to get the best care around here, you go to like you go to University of Miami. That's the highest quality of care. If you're in the medical world, for example. So in our world, it was like, we're going to create this setting where we lead with clinical excellence. We've got a team of people. We do team trainings. We win together. We learn together. We grow together. We very much just believe in that team environment. And then it was like, we built that out so well. It's like, well, why won't we just continue to expand that? I talk to these docs they feel like they're on an island. They're all alone. They're isolated. They're throwing stuff at the wall, like marketing, right? I'm sure you talk to these people. They're like, what's your marketing strategy? What do you mean marketing strategy? Like get new patients? No, that's not a strategy. That's a prayer. So the idea is like actually getting like professionalized and organized around how we're doing this thing. And we're just like, just go tell the message and they're all coming in, or just meditate them into the office. Like, so we have not been professional as far as how we operate and run a business. And so from a long standpoint, or going back many, many years, I just never saw small practice, small business. I always saw doing this as a team, doing this with a group of people, training and developing people, paying forward. My mentors have given me so much. It's like, why wouldn't I pay that forward 10x? And that's always been our methodology.
So my background is in actually occupational therapy, and I remember all through school that one of the number one things that they kept like preaching at us was multidisciplinary care, and how it's the gold standard essentially for patient outcomes. But you nailed it. I mean, this is true for everything in life, right? Is like getting around other people that have different skill sets that you don't have, and coordinating with each other, and et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious as to a little bit more of like how that has affected, like the Serve Bigger has affected like the operations of the business, I guess. Like what are some of like the unique factors that maybe you guys have found or developed or found useful, that you guys maybe do different that probably most practices don't do or don't even think about in terms of how you guys maybe train or coach people on this stuff?
Yeah, it's just such a competitive advantage when you've got experts in all these different verticals, in finance and in marketing and in HR, and you're leveraging professionals. They're not chiropractors. Right? Chiropractors are awesome at chiropractic. So when it's just, we have such a competitive advantage over everybody else, basically. So yeah, it's unfair when we put professionals in the right seat, and then they have a clear vision, and then they have meeting rhythms, and they have scorecards, and they've got clarity around their role, and there's growth trajectory, and there's all these systems in place for success. I mean, the practices go like way up. I mean, it's so fun because we bring in these really great people, and they're doing well. I mean, we don't try to go like save dying practices. We partner with practices that are solid and just want to go to the next level and get behind our vision of taking this premium brand across the US. But they take these like good practices, and we're doubling them, in a 6 to 12 month period. And it's happened consistently so far. So it's really wild. The infrastructure, the team, just the not being alone. I mean, just think about how many decisions that a typical chiropractor make on any given day, on just adjusting patients, on employees, on email follow-ups, on marketing, on their taxes, on their, what they're going to eat for lunch. I mean, you just, when all those things like the employee time, I mean, just spending the time developing and building people is a full-time job. And most chiropractors aren't doing it. They don't have the bandwidth, and it's not their fault. It's just that whole concept hasn't been demonstrated inside of chiropractic. Chiropractic is stuck in like small ball, small thinking, like very, very outdated, antiquated models. And so that's why really our usage in chiropractic, our position in healthcare hasn't drastically changed in our existence. I mean, at least in my last 20 years, let's just say that. In my 20-year career, I haven't seen us move the needle a whole lot. And I'm not playing that doom and gloom. I'm just saying, I don't think if I were to leave chiropractic today, that I had left it better than I found it. I think it'd be basically the same. And I think chiropractors are busting it. I think they're trying to do their best. I think they're delivering great care. I think they have the best relationships with their patients based on any other provider that patient probably sees. I think that there's the compassion level. I think chiropractors really care. I think the integrity and the intention is super high. I just think that the business model itself is probably like way behind, like, probably 20, 30, 40 years behind where it could be if we were to actually come together, stop eating each other and stop, eating and beating each other up, and having these internal wars, but actually come together, be collaborative, and get organized and professionalized. And so basically, I know nobody's coming to do it for us, so that's why we've done it.
Yeah. I mean, even statistically speaking, though, I think the last number I heard is that there's some like 70,000 chiropractors or something like that in the United States. But realistically, though, 93% of them probably should never even been business owners in the first place, to be honest. I mean, kind of like myself, I didn't initially go to school to be an OT, to be a business owner. I went to go practice. And that's probably true for most chiropractors, which means there's only roughly maybe 7% of them that should actually technically that are really wired for the business side of things, I guess you could say. And that doesn't mean you can't build a successful practice if you're not necessarily quote unquote wired to be a business owner, to be an entrepreneur, which is why there's programs like yours and other coaching programs, which kind of leads me to my question of like, what's the common bottleneck or what's the most common issue you see? Like you said, you bring in docs that are maybe doing fine or even doing pretty good for that matter, but they just can't get to the next level. Like what is broken in their psychology, or how are they thinking about things incorrectly that you guys are able to maybe correct, or like what's the common sticking point for people?
Yeah, I mean, Corey, just to shed light on that. I mean, we don't coach, like we're not a coaching program. It's we actually partner and build we create an opportunity where we partner with them so they actually have ownership in all of the practices. So there's full buy-in. So that's part of the issue with a coaching program. Is a coach is fine, you pay them money, they give you some advice, you either do it or you don't do it. You sort of a la carte it, you sort of piecemeal it together to sort of fit what feels comfortable for you. And that's why some people do, really well with some coaching and other people do really poorly, because there's not full buy-in. And that's sort of the difference with Serve Bigger, is that we're all very much on the same team. We're working together. Everybody's highly invested and aligned in incentives. So I think that's our sweets. I've coached for 10 years. I've seen people do awesome, like, again, 2x their practices, highly coachable people that have zero lag time, that just basically put to action any of the recommendations. And then there's other people that just analyze the analysis of the analysis. And so you've got, that spectrum of people. And so it's different, but ultimately, yeah, I've kind of tapped on it already. I mean, it's just a bandwidth. I mean, I think it's hard if you grow, you get busy, you get busy. When you get busy, you stop doing the things that got you busy. And then, people will go, I'm so tired, I'm so burnt out. And it's like, it's hard. It's hard to do, 3 or 4 or 5 jobs well. I mean, most people don't, right? Most people don't do those well. So if you don't kind of plan 6 months, 12 months in advance or more, you're going you're going to get exactly what you want. You're going to grow your patient volume, but then maybe you don't have the infrastructure, or maybe then, because you're getting busy, you're ignoring your team, your employees, or maybe you haven't built the EHR or the software, or the marketing to keep up with your growth, or maybe you didn't look at your fee structure to see if your margins were in place to be able to position you properly for the future. I mean, there's a million things to look at when you grow, and so it's challenging to really have those things dialed. And I don't think any one person can do that well. I think it requires a team of people, like every other business on the planet, that actually do all of those things in their departments, and they do those things really well. And that's what most chiropractors don't have. They don't have professionals that are in the right seats doing the right work at the right time to create significant businesses. Like you mentioned, like a $10 million business. The infrastructure is just not there in most, like almost all chiropractic offices to be able to get to that point. That's why there's very few, if any, chiropractic offices that are doing $10 million. Whereas, you can throw a stone from most major city and hit a business, a healthcare business doing $10 million. BOLB, they have that. They have marketing, they have HR, they have finances, they have all these people that are in place that are all doing their jobs well in order to be able to create that level of revenue, that level of business.
Hmm. Well, give us maybe like I guess the summary or the short or the one sentence version of Serve Bigger then. So what would a chiropractor actually be giving up by joining? And then what would they be getting in return by joining?
Yeah, so Serve Bigger is a collective of offices where upper cervical is our core focus. So we have Nuke offices, we have Blair offices. We're also looking at other upper cervical offices as a core offering. But ultimately, it's just this idea of winning together as a team. It's this idea of if you are maybe anywhere between 5 to 10 years out from considering what's next, and that means optionality. So if you're planning on an exit, if you're planning on either retirement, you're planning on, hey, I'd like to be able to practice at a reduced level, but I'd like to get value for my practice. Those are the kind of people that are interested in Serve Bigger. The benefit to them is that you get to continue doing what you love. We take the stress off of you of running your business from from the marketing, from the HR, from the taxes, the finances, all the kind of back end of the office, the stuff that most chiropractors don't really enjoy. We take that off you, so you basically focus on patient care. And because of that hyper focus, our experience is that the practice grows significantly. And we're able to plug in a lot of other systems and things that also help. But basically, it's awesome because they keep your brand, you keep your brand name. From a patient perspective, there's nothing that changes. They're just going to see things running more efficiently, and you just leverage me and my team. Yes, I coach that chiropractor. Yes, I work on headspace. Yes, I help them believe more in themselves than they ever thought possible. We do all of those things. But beyond that, it's we have a support that comes on the back end, and it just tends to create less stress, creates more ease, and ultimately it provides better care to the patient because there's hyper focus on that concierge level of care to the patient. So the patient wins, the provider wins, and then best of all, I mean, they actually become an owner in Serve Bigger in our holdco, which is growing rapidly and has increased value and gives them access to anywhere between 3 to 5x what you could get in the market. And so there's just no other possibility for that for chiropractors that are kind of looking for what's next. Sadly, chiropractic offices don't get good value in the market. 83% of them never sell. And, brokers often take a bunch of money from you. So there's all kinds of challenges with people that are in that particular phase of their career. And so we're a real solution for those people. And you have to keep doing what you want to do. You get to de-stress and basically increase the value of your practice.
I can safely say anybody listening to this podcast is getting way more value out of this than probably any other chiropractic business podcast, because I can't tell you the number of times now that I've had this conversation about basically like Main Street versus Wall Street exits, and like looking at a chiropractic practice more as a business and less as just a practice. Not that there's anything wrong, obviously, with if you're the type of doctor that just like wants to practice to the end of time and then just shut the doors when you retire. Nothing wrong with that. That's cool. I have no judgments. But in reality, I don't think that's probably most doctors. I think somebody wants to see maybe the pot at the end of the rainbow, I guess you could say. I actually recently had, if anybody wants to check out the episode, I don't know if you know Stu Burnson with Chiro One, but I had him on and we got pretty deep into this about like what does it actually mean to build a sellable asset, which few doctors ever think about, to be honest. But hopefully more doctors are thinking about it now that we're having more of these conversations about it. I got a question for you about doctor psychology. I don't know if this rings any bells for you, but I believe if I read correctly that most owners have a broken doctor psychology, maybe in how they're looking at their business and their practice. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that and what you'd suggest to them.
Doctor psychology. Yeah, you just cracked open a huge can of worms. Yeah, that can mean a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, we're all head cases, right? I mean, and each case is different. Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a lot to be said for headspace and what doctors are thinking about, and if they're thinking about what they're thinking about, and if they're abundant mindset versus poverty mindset. What your belief is about what we do, and when you adjust a subluxation, what does that mean? That's something I love to ask associate docs when I'm interviewing is what does it mean when you adjust a subluxation? Right. And I know it sounds, kind of simple, but you get like all these different multitude of answers, when you ask a simple question like that. So yeah, everybody has a video playing in their mind, right? We all do. And what that video is playing and saying says a lot about where you're going in life. And so, yeah, it's certainly interesting to tap into that. I mean, a lot of chiropractors are super optimistic. We see that, the best in everybody. We tend to be sometimes overly ambitious about certain things. And I love the typical psychology of a chiropractor. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's also limitations. A lot of times chiropractors are self-limited. The only limitations that we have are self-imposed, right? So literally, like the enemy is I. And so any type of limitation on what you believe is possible is because that's the limitation of what you believe is possible. And so, yeah, I mean, psychology of doctors is definitely an interesting topic, and that probably could be its own podcast or series of podcasts in and of itself. But yeah, no, certainly headspace is a piece that we look at.
Yeah, I just started reading a new book about beliefs actually. Trying to remember the name of the author. I'll pull it up here in a minute. But the one of the punchlines that I got from it, kind of just to ping off of your point there, that I just keep ruminating on, is he said that beliefs are a tool, not truth. And I've been thinking a lot about that in the sense of like, there's a spectrum of like what is true and what is not true, right? Like a very obvious truth for most people is that, if you jump off of a 10-foot building of some form, you're going to fall. That is a fact. That is a truth of life. You do that 100 times out of 100 and you're going to fall. But that's not most things. Most things are a little bit more gray. Like most realities are a little bit more gray, and beliefs are a big one of those. Of sometimes you can pick up a belief because it serves you at a certain point of your life, but then sometimes you need to set it down and pick up a different belief. And I just think it's important to be aware. I mean, that's really the punchline of the book, is just being aware of what beliefs you're holding on to at whatever moment, and just know that you don't have to hold on to them forever, and some others might serve you. Even to the beginning of this conversation of like, maybe your initial belief going into this conversation was like, yeah, 7-figure practice is all I need. Maybe not, right? Maybe it needs to be an 8-figure practice. Who knows, right? It's just different beliefs give you different outcomes. But endlessly fascinating topic. But yeah.
You're touching on it's all you need, because in the end, if it's really only self-serving, it's probably, even if you get there, it'll be unfulfilling. So I think if we keep the main thing, which is like, why do we even get into this? And I love that about in chiropractic. It's like, because we believe we have this product that literally, changes, transforms lives, saves people from a whole different future of more medications, more doctors, and more devastation, more destruction in that life and that family and that potential. So what do you need? Well, what I need is fine, but like, what do people need? What does the future of chiropractic need? What does the public need? I think that's the bigger mindset. It's easy for people to go, well, I don't do this for me. I do this for my family. Well, that's fine. And you're going to get to the point where all your family's needs are taken care of. And then what? What are you doing it for at that point? Right. And so it's like, as you can expand the bigness of the problem you're solving, as you can expand the possibility for your contribution and the life that you have, that opens up so many more avenues for creative ways to have a bigger impact. So yeah, mindset is certainly vital. And then the other thought is just like, are you willing and humble enough to actually be open to the fact that some of your beliefs might not be accurate, might not be true, right? That's a
guarantee.
Yeah, like the rock you've been standing on might be made of quicksand, and you might have to reinvent everything. In fact, if you're not reinventing what got you here, I promise you're going to be so far behind. So it's like there's this constant idea of reinventing yourself, actually turning your back on the things that got you to where you're at right now and going, oh, I'm not doing that anymore, which is so difficult. The things that built your success, you have to do it totally different, particularly today in business. Like the new doctors are totally different than doctors 10 years ago. The conversations are completely different. The marketing, I mean, if you're not like leveraging AI hardcore in your marketing, like you're so far behind. So there's so much that changes all the time. So I think it's really important to be open to just constant evolution and adaptation, particularly in today's business.
What got you here won't get you there. And I don't make very many guarantees in this world, but I can guarantee that whoever's watching / listening to this, that your beliefs are not accurate. They're just serving you at the moment, or maybe they're not, but they're definitely not accurate. I would be curious as to, on that note of like, what are some of the beliefs that maybe you've had to shed or let go of, or ones that you've had to adopt on that path of like growing your practice? And I'm sure I'm just more curious, I guess, about like maybe the more pivotal moments, or maybe even like the moments that mostly stand out, because obviously they're always evolving, they're always changing. If there's something people have heard me say before, is that I don't believe there's anything as a neutral engagement. Like even me interacting with you is changing the way I view the world and my beliefs and my realities, I guess, to my degree. But I'm curious as to you is like, what are the bigger moments as you continue to grow that practice to where you're at now, of like, yeah, some of the stuff that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple pieces. I mean, one of the hardcore beliefs, like I thought for many, many years, was just like hard work is always the answer. So if you just work harder, more of what you want is going to come your way. And it's easy for me to revert back to that because I can work very hard, very long hours. And, if, my wife didn't like put vacations on our calendar, I just wouldn't take vacation. I would just work endlessly. And I continue to learn that, being more strategic with my energy, it can outproduce just working harder. I've also learned that there's a lot of people that are way better at things than I am. So people that just try to wear every hat, like you're going to come to, constraints. Like essentially you will be the subluxation in your business. And I think that's probably true for most chiropractors, is they probably are the subluxation in their business. They're just so in it, they can't see it or acknowledge it. So I think certainly being more strategic, being very, I would say, just looking at energy and blocking my calendar, my schedule relative to high value activities, energizing activities, and just getting big enough to delegate everything else. That's been a huge breakthrough for us. Just being honest about what we're good at, what we're not good at. I think that's really important. If you talk to the 3 people that love you the most, they're going to tell you what you're really good at, and they're going to tell you where you need to stop doing stuff. Now it's up to you to actually listen. And so I think, humility goes a long way. I think this understanding of a collaboration and a collective goes a long way. Yeah, ultimately, getting really, really clear on what you want. I talk to a lot of chiropractors and I'm like, what do you really want? And they don't actually know. They don't actually know what they want. They don't know where they're going. So it's like, if you're leaving the port and you don't know where you're going, you're just going to end up wherever the currents take you. And it's probably not going to be where you want to end up. And so clarity is incredibly powerful relative to making progress, having growth, taking breakthroughs. Like, people just don't know where they want to go with their marriage, with their fitness, with their practice, with their family. Like, people just don't have clarity around that. And so because they don't have clarity, they're just kind of accepting what life gives them. Clarity is a big piece of it. And that's something that we work with all of our people, is like, we want to figure out, where do our team want to go? Where do you want to go? How can I support you in getting you where you want to go? If I support you in getting you where you want to go, you're certainly going to work and put forth your best effort to help us as a company get to where we want to go. And it's, so there's just that exchange. It's, it takes time, it takes caring, it takes listening, it takes structure, it takes all those pieces. But those are a few things, Corey, that I think have made a big impact.
There's two I want to double tap on. The first one is the working hard thing, because I wonder how much of an association there is to fitness people like yourself and like myself. I've seen you're quite the CrossFit athlete, and I think that anyone who gets into fitness or working out or anything of that nature, generally speaking, really no matter what you do, the first 2 to 3 years, you're probably going to make progress, right? Like, you got all the newbie gains going on. You got the, like, you're learning the neurodevelopment and the pathways, and like pretty much anything you do, you could you could do some bicep curls and your legs will grow, right? Is like the first couple of years, which is just a matter of like consistently and working hard. So that lesson that you learn early days of any sort of fitness endeavor is just like, work hard and then I'll get the result. But then eventually, after a few years of doing it, you begin to realize that it's not just hard work and it's not going to get you to the next level. What's going to get you to the next level is actually now like strategy and zooming out, and like, when do I need to actually deload, and when do I actually need to take rest, and like, hard work isn't actually going to get me to where I want to go. And I always see those parallels in business as well. And it sounds like you've learned a similar lesson both in the fitness world and in the business world. So that was one thing I wanted to tap on, and the other thing I wanted to tap on too, and feel free to add to either of these, is the vision piece of it. I agree. I think that, I mean, everyone's heard the analogy of like, if you're off by 1 degree, you end up in like a completely different country type situation. But I would also say too, it's hard, right? It's really hard to know. Like, I have this argument with, I shouldn't say argument. I've had this conversation with my fiance many times, is that like, I'm really good at getting what I want, but knowing what I want is so much harder. And I think that's true for most people. I think most people, for the most part, if you're a business owner, if you're working hard or whatever, anything of that nature, is like, you can generally speaking make progress towards something. But the harder thing is like, what do you actually want? And is it actually what you want? Or is it just like what society believed you to want, or what so and so has, so now you want it, right? So I think that knowing of what you want is like, that's a really hard question for most people, myself included. Yeah, curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, so to go back to your hard work analogy, yeah, I mean, I worked really hard for like 5 years trying to go to the CrossFit Games, and I went through various training programs, coaches, and beat my body up pretty good doing that, just doing 2 a days and just exploding my body on a daily, and just kind of essentially grinding myself down to like exhaustion and overtraining. And then got a coach that was like, no, we're gonna do like way less. And like, I would leave the gym and like, I'm making no progress. There's just no way. And then ultimately that was the year I ended up making it to the CrossFit Games. And so it was like so counterintuitive, to do less and to make more progress. But it definitely worked, especially as a master athlete. When you're like 20 years old, you can probably just grind yourself down and still make progress. At 40 years old, at that time, I that wasn't the case. Actually, I was 41 when ultimately I went. But so that's a really interesting analogy. Yeah, the idea of kind of knowing what you want, you mentioned it. I mean, society, it's easy to scroll and get this idea of what you think you want or what society says you want, right? What do you want? You want the big house, you want the nice car, you want the do you want to take these first class vacations because you just use your points, or like you see all this crap on social and scrolling, and I think it's a really dangerous place, because there's that comparison game that starts to play, and you're like, people could feel less than, and there's no context. Anything you see has zero context. You don't know if that's real. You don't know if that's rented. You don't know anything. You don't have real information. So I think it's really important to get clear on what are your particular values, what actually makes you fulfilled. For me, it's like, finances are that's important like it is for anybody, but if I were to like jeopardize my family or my marriage or my faith to, in pursuit of finances, then that's not success at all. So I really saw success. How I define success is different than other people. So when I say clarity, it's like know who you are, and that's a process, right? Everybody's in process. So when you know who you are, you know what you value, then you can actually get clear on what you want. But if you don't really know who you are and you're still learning that and you're still growing, which is perfectly fine, that's normal, then it's difficult to know what you want because you're still trying to figure out who you are. Once you know who you are and you know what matters to you and you know what your core values are, and you're kind of locked in on, hey, this is the things that really matter most to me, this is where I want to spend my time, energy, and money, then you can clarify what success looks like and what that means to you. And then you can kind of target your activities and chunk it down and reverse engineer it and then essentially plan it. You can just schedule your success. You can chunk it down, reverse engineer it, schedule your success, and it just happens.
I don't know if you've ever heard this statistic, but they talk about how like your least happy years are actually like your teens to like your 30s actually, and it's actually like in your technically I think your 40s and 50s and beyond of actually like your happiest years technically speaking. And this is my bro science belief behind that is that I think it's a big part of what you're talking about of you've kind of figured out who you are and what you want and what you don't want because you've made enough mistakes and you've messed up enough times to realize like, oh, that mountain that I climbed is actually the completely wrong mountain. I didn't want anything to do with this like endeavor that I just chased. And now hopefully you're climbing the right mountain. But yeah, I think it's like most things in life is like trial and error and stumbling and making a lot of mistakes. And that's why I think those early years are so young. I have this really stupid belief too around like why do all old people just love like vanilla ice cream? And it's like, well, because they've tried the other 70,000 types of ice cream and they realize they just like vanilla and they don't need to try all the other new ice creams. So they just kind of like figured it out. But that's just my belief behind some of this stuff. But yeah.
I think it's an illusion for people to think they'll be happier later. I mean, wherever you're at, man, if you're a teenager, freaking be a teenager. Like, that's the best time of life. If you're in your 20s, my 20s were super fun, man. I had a lot of fun in my 20s. I wouldn't do what I did today back in my 20s, right? So it's like there's just I don't know, man. I think we have to be really happy where you're at. We all evolve. I think we learn, we grow, but man, just squeeze the juice wherever you're at. I mean, it's an illusion to think that one day you'll be happier. Today's your day, man. I would say if you're 20, if you're 25 and you just graduated from chiropractic school, and you're like, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I need to become. I don't know all these things. I just say, look, like you're 25, you're a doctor of chiropractic, man. You got the world at your fingertips. If you're 30 and you're struggling, you got a new practice. You're like, you got a new practice. You're a business owner. You can accomplish anything in the world. So if you're 50 or 60 and you're like, man, am I washed up? I feel antiquated. I feel like a dinosaur. I'd say, man, think about the lives you transformed and changed, and
Hmm.
talk to me about serve bigger. So I think no matter where we're at, man, there's something special about it. And I would not let years pass you by thinking that it's going to be better down the road.
The gap versus the gain. There's actually a great book about that concept. But I got a speed run for you. You ready
Let's
for I
roll.
got let's do it. What's the biggest misconception chiropractors have about building a high earning practice?
The biggest misconception is that if you keep your fees low, you'll grow faster.
Okay, you need to break that down a little bit. Tell me
This
more.
is speed round. That's what you get.
You're setting the rules? All right, fine. One thing you wish someone told you 10 years ago about building a practice.
10 years ago. Yeah, I would say build your team before you build your practice.
Top tool or resource you can't run your business without.
AI.
You got a specific tool you like? I'm deep into cloud at the
I'm,
moment.
I'm I'm using multiple now for different use cases, but the better you can use AI, I mean, the more you can leverage AI, the better you can prompt. First of all, the more you understand about your topic, the better you can prompt, the more you're going to understand how to maximize the tool.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the amount of hours I spend on Claude now is outrageous. But what's your best piece of advice you ever received?
Sacrifice short term for long term benefit.
Delayed gratification. One more for you. Tell us a little bit more about, this isn't necessarily a rapid fire question round or speed round, but tell us a little bit more about the Serve Bigger thing. I know this is a huge initiative to you. This is something that we only briefly alluded to. Maybe tell like who's a good fit, who's not a good fit. Like just break it down a little bit more for us, just so the listener can understand it.
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah. So essentially, anybody that has been either in practice for 15 plus years, that, upper cervical is either a focus of your offering, or you would be open to that as a core focus of an offering, that would make sense. Somebody particularly that has a practice that's 500,000 plus in revenue, has 150K in profit, and essentially is looking for what's next, is open to this concept of working with a team, would like to de-stress, maybe it's a physical thing, maybe it's just idea of being able to get 3x valuation plus. Anybody that kind of fits that criterion and also has a passion and loves chiropractic. I mean, if you don't have core values of like loving chiropractic, taking care of people, providing subluxation driven care, then certainly that's table stakes. That's important as far as criterion goes. But yeah, basically, this is a great opportunity for anybody that falls inside of that category. The other side of that is if you're newer in practice. You mentioned like what 7% of people should actually be owning a chiropractic office. Maybe you open a practice, you've been doing it for 3, 4, 5 years, and you're like, you know what? This is way more than I realized. I bit off more than I can chew. I love serving in chiropractic, but man, I'm just not the best person to run and operate and lead a practice. Then that would also be someone that would be worthwhile for us talking to. Particularly in the Southeast, we have a Midwest sector as well. We're in Ohio, Texas, and Florida, but anybody in certainly Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, we're actually going to be we're going into Tennessee as well. Anybody in those particular states, Ohio, or any of those particular states, that would be someone that we'd be very keen to talk to. But ultimately, yeah, it's this idea of you being part of this collective, of you leaving a legacy, of you getting great valuation for your practice, and also having growth. So you're going to make more income. Everybody that's been part of our organization has actually increased their income while selling their practice. So it sounds crazy, I know, but that's kind of the secret sauce of Serve Bigger, and that's what we've been able to do thus far. Yeah, we're literally only 10 months into this thing, but we have a big growing business, and yeah, it's something that's very, very exciting, and it's something that we've committed 100% of our energies to. Rather than just investing in Tesla or Nvidia, we're just investing back in chiropractic. We're chiropractic investors. We believe in chiropractic. We doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on chiropractic, and we're putting our money where our mouth is, and that's our vision. Our vision is to take our product to the masses. We know we have a super high quality product, but our presence is really poor and it's totally out of balance. So, it's about time people actually know and understand what we do. They appreciate it, respect it, and receive it. And that's what we're up to.
I love it, man. With a man with a vision, what's the short version of the vision of this thing in the next, we'll say 3 to 5 years?
3 to 5 years, 35 practices. And in 10 years, we'll have 3,000 practices.
I don't doubt you for a second. Justin, is there any topic that we didn't get to discuss that you would have hoped to tap into on this conversation?
We're going to tap into those the next time we get together.
Appreciate it, man. What's your plug? Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can check us out at servebigger.com, Dr. Justin Brown on Instagram, certainly on Facebook. So yeah, but if someone has interest, yeah, you can certainly go on to servebigger.com, watch some videos on there, check out the media, and fill out an information form. I'd be happy to go over anybody's practice, no matter where you're at, whether you're 5 years in practice or 35 years in practice. I'd be happy to have a conversation, usually within about 10 to 15 minutes of me listening. I can probably pick out 2 to 3 things that would make a drastic impact in your practice. Happy to share that with you and connect with you on that. And then if you had any interest in actually joining the collective, we could start that process and go through a clinic profile and really dive deeper in to see if it's a good fit.
Hell yeah. This has been great, Justin. Thanks for doing that, man.
I appreciate you.